Okay, we're going to have about a 25-minute Bible class, so really quick study tonight on something that we're doing called Soldiers of Christ, and it's an effort to try to get us into God's Word and to find some things that we especially need to know about the life of Jesus, which is what we started working on back in January, and we're going to be talking about the life of Jesus for the next few years on Sunday nights. We're not in a hurry to get through it. There's a lot for us to learn there. But we've got cards that we are using, and they just have questions on them. They've got key facts, key locations. They've got key chapters and memory verses that we're trying to learn as a congregation. And so if you are visiting tonight, don't have a set of these with you. Grayson has gladly volunteered with a nice, generous smile to give you a copy and let you look at that as we go through it tonight. If you're sitting there as a couple, you might share one. I don't know if there's enough of those to go around, but you can raise your hand, and Grayson will bring one of those to you. But as we're going through this, we're trying to teach some fundamental principles, but some deep understanding of at the same time, fundamental and deep all at the same time, so that we can have something for our children to learn, and at the same time have something for the rest of us who are not looking like we're children anymore, but we're acting like we're children anyway, children at heart, trying to figure out some things that we can all learn together. And so last week, we took some time to try to take a break, to back up and just review some of the key things that we have talked about up to this point. And as a reminder, what's the two-word summary of the entire Bible? Jesus Christ. The theme of the whole Bible, two words, Jesus Christ. If you need to tell somebody what the Bible is about, you just tell them it's all about Jesus. That's all that the entire Bible is about. And so last week we tried to step through about 5 channels, and we only made it through 2 channels of review. That first channel of review, we spent a lot of time talking about the eternal existence of Christ. The fact that He did not just come into existence when He was born on this earth 2,000 years ago, but the fact is that Christ has always existed. John chapter 1 and verse 1, we had some young men last week that helped us with that verse. Remember what John chapter 1 and verse 1 says? In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Good job, Levi, you remember it. The Word was God. When has God existed? He's always existed. Christ has always existed. And so we looked at a number of things in regard, and we're not going to go back and look at all of those things again tonight, the eternal existence of Christ. But then the second channel we looked at last week was this matter of talking about John the Baptist. Thank you, Grayson. This matter of just looking at some of the key things that we see about John the Baptist coming into the world. We're going to loop back around, obviously, and talk more about John the Baptist in the coming weeks. This is not all that the Bible says about John the Baptist, but this involves the promise about the birth of John the Baptist. Was it miraculous that this boy was born to parents who were aged? Somebody say, well, it may not be miraculous, but it may be providential. Well, was God involved in it one way or another? God was involved in that little boy being born. What was John's parents' names? You sound so confident in that. Levi is the only one who's shouting it out like he knows it. Zacharias and Elizabeth. Those are his parents. Now, that's about as far as we got trying to get through some of this review. And so what I want us to do is to get into this third channel of review tonight, and we're summarizing these questions to talk about the fact that there were promises made. Let's see if we can get this to stand up. Don't do this at home. This is a $150 microphone, so let's not break it. All right, so no, that's just inflation talking. It wasn't that much when we bought it. So Jesus is coming. Is there anything about telling us about Jesus is coming in the New Testament? When it was time for Jesus to be born into this world, there is someone who came along and announced His birth to Mary. Do you remember who announced His birth to Mary? Gabriel. Now, who was Gabriel? An angel. Was this the first time that Gabriel had announced the coming of Jesus? Shake your head this way. Even if you don't know the answer, just shake your head this way. Is this the first time that Gabriel announced the coming of Jesus? No, it's not. Gabriel, this is for those of you in deeper waters of Bible study, Gabriel announced the coming of Jesus 550 years earlier than this one that we're reading about in the New Testament. You think, wait a minute, what do you mean 550 years earlier? Jesus didn't come well, read the book of Daniel. And there's a fun prophecy at the end of Daniel chapter 9 It's called Daniel's 70 weeks. And in that prophecy about the 70 weeks, guess who prophesied about the coming Messiah? Guess who told Daniel about the fact that there was going to be a Messiah that was going to come? Guess the name of that angel who told Daniel that the Messiah was going to come? Gabriel. Gabriel's an old angel, huh? I mean, he's at least 500. How old do angels get? They never grow old? That's what, so Eva's singing a song back here, never grow old. So I don't know if that's angels or not, but here's the same angel talking about the fact that Jesus is going to come. Now, where was he born? He was going to be born in Bethlehem. Where were his parents when this announcement was made? They were in Nazareth. Nazareth. Remember what Nathanael said about Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Well, who came out of Nazareth? Mary and Joseph. That's something good, isn't it? Nazareth didn't have a good reputation. Not exactly sure why they didn't have a good reputation. Maybe they were a violent city. Remember what happened when Jesus went back there as an adult in his ministry? Yep, they wanted to kill him. They're violent people. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Yeah. Here come Joseph and Mary. They're brought out of Nazareth by the Lord, and they're going to be his earthly mother and father. What are their names? Who is it, David? Mary and Joseph. Levi, what'd you say? Mary and Joseph, all right, are his mother and his earthly father. Now, one more question here, and then we're going to get some help from some young men. What kind of man was Joseph? He's a carpenter. That's what he did for a living. What kind of man was he? Was he a good man? Matthew chapter 1 describes him as a just man. What does that indicate to you? He's a righteous man. What was his relationship with Mary? At this time, they were betrothed. Under Jewish customs, they were betrothed sometimes for up to a year before they got married. But do you know what they didn't do during this betrothal period before they got married? They did not sleep with each other. They did not move in and shack up with each other. They were still living in mom and dad's homes, even though they're betrothed to each other. And so when Joseph learns that Mary is pregnant, you know what Joseph knows, at least you know what he knows for sure? Not me. Not me. Is he troubled about it? But he's a just man. What do we learn about his reaction to learning about the fact that Mary was pregnant? Did he want to rush her out? Make her a spectacle? Did not want to make her a public example. But thought, okay, I'm going to put her away. And how was he going to put her away? Privately. And then the very next verse in Matthew chapter 1 says, while he thought about these things. Think about that. Joseph was thinking about, what am I going to do here? He didn't rush to judgment. He didn't rush into he didn't rush to a decision. He says, what am I going to do about this? That's a pretty good thing to do, isn't it? You hear about something, you're not really sure what's going on. There's a verse somewhere in a book that says, be quick to hear and then slow to something else. Oh, you've read that. Here was Joseph. He's formulating some thoughts. He's thinking through, what am I going to do in this situation? And the angel comes to Joseph and says, take Mary, your wife, number one. Oh, Lord, where'd she get the baby? The child is of the Holy Spirit. And what are you going to name him? Jesus. One of our memory verses is from Matthew chapter 1, verse 21. This is on your priest card. On the yellow cards, this is a memory verse on the priest card. How well do you know this memory verse? Do you know this memory verse? Do you know Matthew 1, 21? I hope we know this verse tonight. Where's Brian? Looking for Brian. Brian was going to quote this verse last week, but we didn't get this far last week. So Brian, you're going to get to go first tonight. Come here, Brian. Brian's going to come up, and Brian's going to help us with Matthew 1 and verse 21. And see, I don't know if you all know Matthew 1:21. Come up here, bud, where they can see you. Everybody wants to see your beautiful face and your awesome shirt. Can I borrow that shirt? So Matthew 1:21. Brian, come right up here, bud. Right up here. You ready for this? You want say Matthew 1:21, and then you can go with the verse, okay?
Matthew 1:21. And she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, and he will save his people from their sins.
Good job. Great job, Brian. You can go back and sit down. He's been working on that. Does he know that verse? There's 3 people in that verse. You know 3 people in that verse? There's 3 people in that verse. Who are the 3 people? The angel's talking to Joseph. The first person that, I can't get this on. First person he's saying in this verse is she. She's going to bring forth a son. Who's the she? Mary. Second person in this verse, you. Who's the you? Who's the angel talking to? Joseph. She's going to have a boy, and what are you going to do? You're going to give him a name. What are you going to call him? Jesus. Good job. What's Jesus going to do? He's the third person in this verse. Save his people from their sins. Caleb, do you know this verse? All right, Caleb, come up here, bud. Come here, Caleb. Caleb's not walking like Jesus tonight. He was walking. Oh, he is. Oh, I thought you had. I was looking at your shoes this morning. You got your Jesus shoes on tonight, but your toe is looking better though. Your toe's not looking all ugly like it was last week. All right, do you know this verse?
Yes.
All right, go for it.
Matthew 1:21, and she shall bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will be the Savior from his people from their sins.
Good job. I think he's practiced that a couple times. He knows that verse. Lucas, you know this verse, Luke? Come on up, bud. Lucas is sharp. He makes me feel like I need to stand up straight. Come on up, Lucas. I know you know this verse. All right, you ready?
Matthew 1:21, and she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins.
Great job. Good job. Can we learn this verse? We can learn this verse. We know this verse. Levi, you ready, bud? Come on up, man. Come on up, Levi. Levi knows this verse. You can bring your field manual with you. Every soldier needs a good field manual. All right, here he comes. He's going to read the verse if he needs to. Marvel shirt, nice shirt. All right, come on up, buddy. All right, you know this verse? All right, come here.
Matthew 1:21, she shall bring forth a son, and you will call his name Jesus, and he will save his people from their sins.
Good job. Great job, buddy. All right, David, you ready, man? Come on up. All right, look at this smile. He knows what he's doing. Yeah, you can come up that side. Look at that. All right, you ready? All right.
Matthew 1:21, for she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, and he will save his people from his sins.
Good job. All right. If they can learn memory verses, can you learn memory verses? You are not too old to learn a memory verse. There's not too many memory verses on these cards, but key verses are pulled out to say, we need to know these verses. We need to be able to, like Levi and Lucas and David, and I shouldn't have started naming names, and Brian and Caleb and all of these young men, we need to be able to quote them like they were able to quote them. They are showing us how to study the Bible, how to learn the Bible. Thank you, young men, for coming up and helping us with that. And that not only do we have memory verses, but we've got key locations that maybe I don't memorize maybe I don't memorize the verse itself, but I memorize where it is so I can go and find it. Where's there a verse in the Bible besides Isaiah 14? Where's there a verse in the Bible that says Jesus was born of a virgin? That's Matthew chapter 1, verse 23, 2 verses after the verses the boys just quoted. But turn to Luke chapter 1 real quick. Get your fingers doing some walking. Turn to Luke chapter 1 real quick. And the announcement that is made to Mary that she's going to have a son in Luke chapter 1, The announcement that is made is what kind of person is this going to be that she is giving birth to? Well, obviously it's going to be a boy, and obviously it's going to be a baby boy, and she is told by Gabriel here in Luke chapter 1 that you need to name him Jesus. But I want you to look in verses 32 and verse 33. We haven't talked about this. Verses 32 and 33. Gabriel says to Mary, Luke chapter 1 verse 32, about Jesus, he will be great, and he will be called the Son of the Highest. And the Lord God will give him the what? The throne of his father David. What are you talking about? Give him the throne of his father David. If you rewind in your mind 1,000 years before this, 1000 BC, one of the great promises about the church was a promise that was made to David in 2 Samuel chapter 7. Great promise about the coming kingdom. David was going to die. He was going to have a son. What was his son's name that's going to be the next king? Good. 4 of you knew that. Solomon. All right. So his son was going to be Solomon. He was going to be king. But how long was Solomon going to be king? 40 years. Good. All right. So Solomon's going to be king for 40 years. But God says to David in 2 Samuel chapter 7, oh, no. We're not satisfied with one man being king on an earthly kingdom for 40 years. After you, I'm going to set up a kingdom that will last forever. And your descendant, your seed, will sit on the throne of that. Well, what kind of kingdom lasts forever? Oh, that's a heavenly kingdom. Well, who could sit on it forever? Solomon died. David died. Who could sit on it forever? Oh, that'd be Jesus. There's a promise made that Jesus was going to be a king and sit on his throne, on David's throne. And what is Gabriel saying to Mary? It's time for that to happen. It's time for that 1,000-year-old prophecy to happen. Verse 33, he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end. That prophecy came true in Jesus. That's a verse you need to know. Luke chapter 1, verse 32 and 33. That's a verse you need to know where it is. You may not need to quote it, but if you to get into a discussion with a premillennialist believes that Jesus did not set up his kingdom the first time when he came. Believes instead that man rejected him and rejected his kingdom, and so that Jesus set up the church instead of the kingdom. But he's going to come back at the end of the world, and he's going to set up his kingdom on the earth, and he's going to reign for 1,000 years. What did Gabriel just say to Mary that her son was going to do when he was born? Going to be the king that would sit upon the kingdom that was promised to David. You think Gabriel knew what he was talking about? Where did Gabriel get that idea from? God told him to say it. You think God knew what he was talking about? Jesus is coming. Preparations were being made for Jesus to come. So the next channel I want us to talk about tonight is to talk about the birth of Jesus. Now, who was, and this isn't on your card, who was the Roman emperor when Jesus was born? Luke chapter 2, verse 1. Who was the Roman emperor when Jesus was born? We've got a month that sort of is like this. It's not June or July, but it's August. Good. At least we know the months of the year. So Augustus was the Roman emperor. What difference does that make? Well, do you remember where Mary and Joseph were? Remember the name of the city where Mary and Joseph were when they told they're going to have a son, and Mary's pregnant, and now she's pregnant, and now she's really pregnant. And you remember what city they're in? Nazareth. That's a good, well, not back then, but it's a good city for them to be in. But I'm not sure that that's where they needed to be. What city was Jesus supposed to be born in? Bethlehem. And what city are they in? Nazareth. Those are not near each other, okay? That's not like saying Palm Beach Gardens and North Palm Beach and you're not really sure where that line is when you cross it. They're not near each other, okay? With the way that the roads would work, it would be about 90 miles to get there. Now, how long does it take you to go 90 miles? You say, don't ask that question because I don't want to answer out loud. And however long it takes you to go 90 miles, it would have taken them at least 3 days, maybe 4. And if you were pregnant and riding on a donkey, how many days would you want it to take? All right? So it took them multiple days. Well, how in the world, God, you got a problem here. You got a very pregnant lady, 90 miles, more than 3 or 4 days away from the place where this child's supposed to be born. God, you got a problem. How are you going to work this one out? You think God's in charge? What does the big man Augustus sitting on the throne, what does he decide to do? Everybody needs to be registered. Fantastic. Where do I need to go to register? Your hometown. You got to go home. Joseph's got to go home. Now, does he take his wife with him, or she leave him? She leave her all by herself? You're coming with me. You're going to get on that donkey, that horse, that camel, whatever they're riding. We're going to go down to Bethlehem. Did God figure out a way to get them where they needed to be? What if Jesus had been born in Nazareth? Is that a problem? He's not the Messiah. He didn't even have a chance. He's born in the world in the wrong city, and all of a sudden, it's gone. He's not the Messiah if he's born in Nazareth. He had to be born in Bethlehem. And so, who was it that announced the birth of Jesus to the shepherds? Just an angel. We're not told the name of this angel, but where were the shepherds? Where were the shepherds when the angel came and told them? Out in the fields with their sheep. Is that something that they would typically be doing in winter time? Out there in the cold with their sheep, like on December 25th? No, that's not where they would be. They would have been inside in a warm place in the winter on December 25th. What does that tell us about the time of year when Jesus was born? Not likely December 25th. So, they're out in the fields. It's cold out in the fields in winter, but it wouldn't have been cold here. And here comes this messenger, this angel, to tell the shepherds about Jesus being born. Where was he born? What city? Bethlehem. Which one? The good one. The good one. He was born in the good Bethlehem. Which Bethlehem? Was he born in Bethlehem of Judah down south? Or was he born in Bethlehem of Zebulun up north? Would it matter? I mean, by the way, Bethlehem of Zebulun is a lot closer to Nazareth than Bethlehem of Judah. I mean, if you're just flipping through the map and she's looking at the atlas, and Joseph says, we got to get to Bethlehem, and she's like, oh, that's only about 10 miles away. That's not too bad. He says, no. We've got to go to the one down south. That's about 90 miles. Well, can't we just go to this one? Which one was he from? Bethlehem of Judah. Well, this is Bethlehem. It's the same name, isn't it? Doesn't it work just as well? Bethlehem of Zebulun. Do you know in Micah chapter 5, when God prophesied about where Jesus would be born in verse 2, do you know that he specified which Bethlehem Jesus would be born in? Why didn't God just leave it up and say, just Bethlehem, you pick the one that's closest to you? Not pick the one that's closest to you. The right Bethlehem is where he had to be born. Isn't that interesting? That God found a way to get them to the right Bethlehem. What did the shepherds do? Or where did they find him? City of David, that's Bethlehem. Found him there. Where was baby Jesus? Was he in a castle? He's in a penthouse suite, right? I've been, by the way, to some of the hospitals these days, and the birthing suites. Those are like penthouse suites. I mean, seriously, those are some nice rooms in hospitals these days. Is that where Jesus was born? No. He's lying in a manger, wrapped in swaddling. So this is wait a minute. What was the prophecy to David? There's going to be this person that's going to come and sit on your throne. What kind of person sits on a throne? A king. Does Jesus look like a king when he's born in a manger? When they went to offer the sacrifice for him at the temple, what did they offer? The poorest of poor offerings. He doesn't look like a king when he's born. He doesn't have the royalty and the riches that a king would normally have. Did this mess with the minds of the Jews of that day? This isn't what we expected. What's Luke chapter 2, key chapter? What's Luke chapter 2 about? It's about the birth and the early years of Jesus. We're going to come back and talk about that probably next week. Real quick question. Was Mary a virgin when Jesus was born? Certainly was. How'd that happen? By a miracle of God. Was Mary, after Jesus was born, was she a perpetual virgin? Did she remain a virgin for the rest of her life? As some would teach that she did. How would you show that she did not remain a virgin for the rest of her life? Oh, she had other children. Read John chapter 7, verse 5. The relatives of Jesus there are described as his brothers who did not believe in him. Read Acts chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, where Mary is in the upper room with the disciples and the brothers of Jesus. Where'd she get the brothers of Jesus? They were his biological brothers. They're from the same mama. She was not a perpetual virgin. And there's more we could talk about there, but that is an easy way for us to see it. So, last channel. Oh, we got to do this one quick. Last channel. And I've got this one in quotation marks. But Jesus as a toddler. Now, the Bible doesn't say toddler. I understand that. I've got it in quotation marks. But when you read Luke chapter 2, the shepherds came to find a baby. That's the word that's used in Luke chapter 2, is a baby. But when you read Matthew chapter 2, and you read about the wise men who came to see Jesus, it's not, the word that's used there is not baby, it's talking about a young child. Now, I know a baby is a young child, but it's a completely different word that's used over Matthew 2 to talk about a young child. Now, when we turn to Matthew chapter 2, what was it that led the wise men to find Jesus? What star? What star? His star. We saw his star in the east, and we have come to... They've done what? They've come to do what? Nathan, did you say it? They've come to worship him. Would you go worship a little child? I mean, seriously. You bring a toddler up here, are you going to come and worship that toddler? What did they know about this toddler? They know this is Jesus. They don't fully grasp everything, but when they came to Jerusalem, they first came to Jerusalem, and they talked to Herod, and they said, "We have heard there has been one born, and he's the King of the Jews." That's all they knew. He's the King of the Jews. And so they are out to worship the King of the Jews. Now, how many of them were there? How many wise men were there? We don't know because the Bible doesn't tell us. How many gifts did they bring? 3. How many wise men were there? We don't know because the Bible doesn't tell us. What were the gifts that they brought? If you have a baby and Tracy and I come by to see you at the hospital, would it be okay for us to bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh? Absolutely. We're all for it. Let's have a baby so we can have some gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So they bring these gifts. They worship the child. Wow. They worship the child, and then they leave. Do you think they comprehended everything that just happened there? You're right, David. They didn't. They didn't grasp everything that just happened there. But they leave there, and they're warned by God to go to another direction, so they do not go back the same direction. They don't go back to Herod. So what did Herod end up doing? How did Herod try to kill Jesus? He killed what kind of children did he kill? Male. How did they know if they were male or not? How did they know? Had they self-identified yet? Yeah, they self-identified when they came out of the womb. They weren't talking, but their body was, and identified, here's what I am. How did he know? How did they know to find males? How old were those males? 2 years old and under. How did he figure that out? In Matthew chapter 2, we've got to stop here. Matthew chapter 2, he determined how old the children needed to be that he was going to slaughter in verse 16. He determined that by what he learned from the wise men. And what he had learned from the wise men down in verse 7 is how long had the star been out there. And so what he learned from the wise men when he visits with them, how long had the star been out there? And so when he doesn't get the wise men to bring Jesus back to him like he asked them to, he decides to slaughter all of the children who were around there so that he could at least kill Jesus. And so where does he start? 2 years old and under. What does that indicate to you about the time frame that the wise men must have told him? It was less than 2 years. But do you get the idea that Jesus was a newborn at that point? In Luke chapter 2, when he's born, he's in a manger in Bethlehem. It's not where he is anymore. Now he's in a home, and that's where the Magi come. That's where the wise men come. They come into a home where Mary and her son Jesus are there. Real quick, they run. After they try to kill Jesus, Joseph takes them down to Egypt. Takes Mary and Jesus down to Egypt. Was that ever prophesied? That was prophesied. When they come back, they go to Nazareth. Was that to fulfill prophecy? Matthew chapter 2 says that was to fulfill prophecy too. How did Joseph know all of that? Did Joseph have like a cheat sheet? Was he like one of those quarterbacks that had one of those wristbands? You seen those quarterbacks that got the wristbands on, and some of them they flip them open to see all the stuff. Was he like, okay, let's see, check, got that one, God, what's next? Okay, check, got that prophecy. Is that what Joseph's doing? Or is he just doing as he knows to do, as God tells him to do? He brings Jesus back, and instead of staying down in the south in Judah, he goes up north where it's more peaceful. When Herod the Great died, his kingdom was divided among his children. When he dies, the south is ruled by Archelaus, who was a very vile person like Herod the Great was, but the north was a little more peaceful. That's where Joseph took Jesus to be raised in Nazareth. All right, we're over time tonight. Come back next week. We're going to talk about Jesus as a preteen. That'll be fun. All right, see you all Wednesday night.